Welcome to From the AD's View. I'm your host, Dr. Cedric Brown. On today's show, we'll discuss sports, education, entertainment, family, and faith, and how those things separately or combined can impact our lives. Let's get it. Welcome back to the show. Before we bring on tonight's guest, I would like to give honor to God, who's the head of my life, because without Him, none of the things that I do in life would be possible. My career, being a husband to my beautiful wife, Linda, being a father to my children, nothing would be possible. If you've missed any of our episodes, don't worry. You can catch any of our episodes pre-recorded on the Leon Thomas Group YouTube channel, right? And we are here each night at 6:30 Central, 7:30 Eastern Standard Time, and you can catch us anytime on those Sundays. But if you have missed us, please go to the Leon Thomas Group YouTube channel and you can look at any From the AD's View episodes. Now, let's talk about our special guest this evening. This gentleman is educated with his Bachelor's of Arts, Master's of Science, his PhD from Penn State University. He's a former Penn State student athlete, a member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. He was the assistant AD at the oldest HBCU in the United States, Cheney University in Pennsylvania. He was a former administrator at Duke University. He was the vice president of athletics for Alcorn State, Eastern Washington, and Chicago State. And currently, he's the administrator for 21st Century Community Learning Center in North Carolina. Dr. Hamilton, welcome to the show.
Thank you. What a warm welcome. I appreciate that and all those kind words. It's amazing you're actually speaking about me.
Well deserved. Well deserved. Before we get into the topics, Dr. Hamilton, many people will understand that I've always cherished and honored individuals that have been in my life, that have poured into my life. And then backstage in the green room, we were talking. You've been my mentor for 18 years. When I
Wow,
was a
time
young pup,
flies.
at Chicago State, you've been my mentor
Wow.
that long, man.
It doesn't seem like that. Wow, time flies. I mean, it seems like 2-3 years ago.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And in all of the opportunities that I've had, right? I get on the phone, I call 919. Hey, Doc Hamilton, I need to know, what do you think? How would you approach this? How would you go about that? So before we get into the topics, Doc, you've mentored many, and I know them, right?
Oh yeah.
What is your approach in mentoring young people, young African American men, right? But
Right.
people in general, right? What is
Right.
your approach to mentoring people like me, or the young women that you've mentored inside of intercollegiate athletics? What's that approach like for you?
So, I take the approach and the foundation that nobody can become what they've never seen. And so I try to expose, introduce, and kind of share with people to think about what is it that you would like to do in life after school. And so when you start talking about relationship building, it's more than just relationship building because you can build a relationship, but you have to use it in a positive way. And that's leveraging that relationship in those networks. And even though you may not have a reason for those relationships or those networks at that time, a good check in, a good and welfare call, email, text, whatever, to keep that relationship alive and not be 3, 4, 5 years down the road before you touch base with them. And so for everybody, it's always about giving back, helping, reaching back, bringing people forward because I didn't get here by myself. So the people who have come in my life, some have passed. And so, a way for me to give back, even though they have passed, I just help others. And I do that in a various way. And I do it in a number of different industries and businesses and settings. So, helping athletes is something near and dear because I was a student athlete, so it comes naturally. And certainly being a people person comes naturally. So, I try to give everybody the best advice possible.
Yes, sir. And I can attest to that. I am a living witness to that. Another question that I would like to ask you off the topic, Doc, is you have raised millions of dollars inside of athletics, being VPs of athletics at the various institutions that you were at. And you always taught me friend raising leads
Hmm.
to fundraising, right? Um,
Absolutely.
what are give us a couple of nuggets, and then we'll go into these topics. Give us a couple nuggets on your approaches um to the gift, right? To the gift
Sure.
that's the
Mhm.
ultimate goal, but before the ask, give us some nuggets about that, a little wisdom about that before the ask of that gift.
So everybody works on a particular campus, organization. Somebody has a database of alums, friends, people who have been affiliated with that organization. If you're talking about university level, the alumni relations, the fundraising or development office has a database of individuals. And so, what you try to do is develop a relationship with those individuals so that they can give you a list of either alums, corporate and foundation relations folks, friends of the university, or people who have given in the past. And then you try to coordinate where is it that you like to concentrate your efforts. And so for me, I always wanted to go to those folks who were, they had the ability to give, they may not have been in touch with the institution for years, and I'd like to make some cold calls. And so I found myself being able to reach out to people in the institution to provide me with data and somebody's net worth and their ability to give, because I don't want to ask somebody whose net worth is $250,000 for $250,000 gift. I
Yes,
want to
sir.
ask somebody who's worth $10 million for $250,000 gift over a year or whatever.
Yes, sir.
And so the key to getting the gifts is to cultivate a relationship, and that is to make contact with them. And so what I did as a personal practice, I'd make 20 contact visits per month with 20 different individuals. Then I would reassess my notes. Then I would think about a second visit, and I can get a sense of whether people have an interest in giving a gift, and if they have a love for athletics or a particular area or something, and that's gleaned through that conversation in that visit. And so once you get that started, you want to make sure that your efforts for fundraising is coordinated with the university so you don't run over the place with it.
Yes, sir.
And what I always love to do is I always love to do my first 60-day campaign. What can I raise in 60 days? It could be $250,000. And so you kind of do some math and say, okay, I got a list of 5,000 people. So if I can get 1,000 people to give $250, I'm going to get there. And so you do the math, and it sounds, wow, that's pretty simple. And but that's just 1 year. And so
Right.
what you want to do is you want to start small so that you can cultivate and steward that relationship so that they can give that each and every year. So then going into next year, you already have that seed. And then what you want to do is you want to increase it by launching a campaign of some sort.
Yes, sir.
And so you want to have them to increase their ability while they still give their annual gift. But it's got to
And
be a coordinated process.
yes, sir. And that's
Mm,
wisdom from Dr. Darren J. Hamilton.
good.
So going into some of the topics that I sent you, Doc, briefly tell the viewers about your work with 21st Century Community Learning Center.
So the 21st Century Community Learning Center is grant funded programs that the funds come from the United States Department of Education, and they are earmarked for the state to govern them. So North Carolina Department of Public Instruction receives somewhat of $60 million for the 21st Century Community Learning Center programs, in which I manage a little over 20 million. And it's to serve those students in high poverty schools that are underperforming, so that those students can grow and or achieve on grade level. And so we all know in America that they build prisons based upon the lack of reading level below third grade, right?
Yes, sir.
So one of the things we're trying to do is to get people on grade level. And we do it through a number of different ways. You have academic support, which is tutoring, academic enrichment, and then also we have caregiver or family engagement, because we know that generations of high school dropouts and high school dropouts, they don't know how to support their child. And so, again, remember what I said at the beginning: you cannot become what you can't see.
Mhm.
So if those kids only see mom and dad, or just mom or grandmama just sitting around a house, or that's the life that they aspire to, that's all they know, and no fault of theirs. So we try to help them in that capacity. So I work in about 16 different counties, a little over $20 million, and we have programs set up either in the school, in faith-based organizations, or community-based organizations like Boys and Girls Clubs, YMCAs, etc.
Yes,
And
sir.
so they run these after-school programs specifically targeted to academic support, academic enrichment, and caregiver and family engagement. Those are the three purposes of the grant.
And so I heard you say faith based, and
Mhm.
obviously, Dr. Hamilton, you and I have had multiple many conversations about our faith, and I'll ask you a question later on.
Sure.
But how, when many times when government wants to separate church and education, how have you been able to merge those two together successfully?
Well, the faith-based, that's just that they're not permitted. They would not be in compliance with the funds if they were to impose any kind of hymns,
Okay.
prayer sessions. So we just utilize that facility.
Okay.
So they know up front that faith is not part of any curriculum or enrichment.
Okay. All
So
right.
it's just a facility. So we utilize those facilities to serve those students as well as caregivers and parents.
Okay. Well,
Mhm.
Dr. Hamilton, stay with me. We're going to come back and talk about some other topics of discussion. You are watching From the 80s View. I'm your host, Dr. Cedric Brown. We'll be right back after this break.
Renting is everything. It's style at your doorstep, off the runway, and into your closet. It's every trend you've been dying to try, and every designer you've yet to discover. It's wearing it your way every time and making it count everywhere you go. It's never worrying about what to wear, because something new is always coming your way. That's why renting is everything. New styles, top designers, all for a flat monthly fee. Start your subscription at renttherunway.com.
slow roasted over hickory fire and pulled by hand. This is the way pit pork has always been done. Pulled pork lovers, rejoice. The smoky old days are back at the Smoke Shack. From the creative team that brought you The Browning Project and Dead by Morning comes a new thriller that will change the way you look at white-collar crime forever. Falling from the Sky.
Water. It's everywhere. We drink it, we bathe with it, we cook with it. Coffee's made with water. Toilets won't flush without it. It's used for washing clothes, dishes, utensils, pots, pans, floors, and our teeth. Plants and crops need water, animals drink it, and fish need it too. And don't forget, we can have a lot of fun in the water. Water. What will we do without it?
I'm Leon Thomas with the Leon Thomas Group. Podcast, virtual events, webinars, streaming shows, and so much more. We want to be your partner in all things virtual.
Welcome back to the show. Be sure to watch us each Sunday evening at 6:30 Central, 7:30 Eastern for more open and honest discussions from the AD's view. If you'd like to get in contact with me, you can reach me on my Instagram at From the AD's View or on my website, cedricmbrown.org, or you can email me at cmbrownsportmanagement@yahoo.com. And now let's bring back Dr. J. Hamilton. Dr. Hamilton, you were a student athlete in the Big Ten at Penn State University. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But let's briefly talk about this NBA Eastern Conference and Western Conference finals. I mean, I thought that LeBron and AD would fare a little bit better, but it's like, the Joker and Jamal Murray and, KCP. I mean, they giving it to them 3-0. What you think?
So when you start looking and assessing professional sports, you find that the most continuity of players are those players that are consistent across the board,
Yes, sir.
that can play full seasons, that they come together and they are very consistent with their production or output. And I'll tell you, like an NBA coach once said, I'm looking for the player who can give me consistently 15 points, maybe 6 rebounds a game, 4 assists. You have to consider what the agenda is of the players first and foremost, and then you have to see how that all translates into the team. And then as the team goes, then you'll see these championships. And it appears as though that Los Angeles Lakers had some injuries. They've had some lack of continuity. They made some trades. So we have some people that are out there to try to Lonnie Walker's. He said nobody knows who he is.
Right.
So
right.
What does that say? Uh-oh, it's about me.
Me, right? Yes, sir.
People say there's no I in team, but there's a me in team. And so people get it kind of twisted. But when you look at the Joker, he's very consistent. very consistent. He's going to bring more triple doubles more often than not,
Right.
whether it's 30, 20, and 16, or whether it's 15, 15, and 10. He's very consistent in what he does. When we go to the Eastern Conference, what I don't hear people talking about, and you can feel me with this one, nobody's mentioning strength and conditioning, because we know 90% of that is building mental toughness,
Absolutely.
which, in my opinion, is what Boston's lacking. They have fallen off in the fourth quarter how many years in a row?
Right.
And so when you talk about Miami, Miami has that strength, that grit, and that stamina. And so they're going to play, and they have more hunger in them. And you know the new 21st century word, they got more dogs on that team.
They have more
And so when you
dogs.
talk about the dogs, you talk about Jalen Brown jumping off, right? He's dropping off. Uh, you got a lot
Jay
of people
Tatum. Jay
who are up
Tatum.
and down,
He
up
Jay
and down, up
Tatum,
and down. Yeah,
he
yeah.
came in and said humbly, I'm one of the best players in the league when he had his, his 51-point night, and then went the very next
Mm,
night and laid an egg, right? But the one when you talk about consistency,
right.
Dr. Hamilton, you're talking about Jimmy Butler, who, Marquette University. Nobody act like they want to know his name, but he just plays with that big, not a chip. He plays with a boulder on his shoulder. And if you watch his post game interviews, he's like, "Man, you keep asking me these questions. Like, do you think that we should be here?" He's like, we don't care about that. We're playing to be 1-0 every night. That's what we're doing.
That's right.
And that is that dog that you talk about.
Hmm.
Um,
Oh yeah.
quick question: if LeBron loses this series, which inevitably he loses series. Does that impact his legacy at all?
I don't think so. I think people put too much into one season, into one particular championship. He's feeling his oats as an accomplished player. So the moves that the Lakers make, I'm sure they consult with him and some of the players that they have acquired. Schroeder, I mean, his second tour with them. You got to understand, they're looking for pieces. They're searching. They're
Yes,
not
sir.
trying to develop people. So
Right.
they're in it for now. And
Mhm.
so it's not about team there. It's about trying to win, not in a very consistent, you're not
Right.
building a program. And so
Exactly.
they were a little embarrassed about the Lakers' tradition. So they made all these moves. Who does that? Who does that? I mean, that's why, and I'm not trying to talk about college, but that's why you see the one and done programs. My former employer, they're not consistently there in the
Yes,
final
sir.
four. One and dones have put you at what I call uh, an unstable kind of situation. But if you look at these other teams, Miami, they've constantly kept continuity with coaches,
Yes, sir.
with presidents, GMs, players, and they develop them. But when you're ready to get rid of somebody quickly, I have questions about that.
You
But the
mentioned your
Western and the Eastern Conference, they have two different dynamics.
yes, sir.
So I just want to share that, because Boston is about building for
Absolutely.
consistency and continuity, but they're missing that piece of strength and conditioning and mental toughness.
Right. A lack of that dog.
Right.
You mentioned your former employer. My favorite college basketball program, Duke University.
Yes.
How did it hit you when Coach K retired?
Well, first of all, I just want to say I never would mention which former employer, but you got it. Um, I think everybody goes when they're ready. And
Yes,
I
sir.
like how he went on his terms when he went out that way. I don't think it's too soon. I don't think it's too late. I like his class. I love his approach to the game. I love the way he recruits student athletes and he gets to know the families so that they know exactly what's expected. And you very rarely hear about the off the court problems that other programs may even encounter.
Yes, sir.
And you see that in the ACC, you see that in the Big Ten, you see that in the Big 12. Rarely will you see it at Duke University because they do expect people to embody integrity and to remember who they represent and what they represent.
And thank you for that correction too, Doc. Yeah, you hadn't mentioned it, but in my mind, I know where you come from. So absolutely. So thank you for that correction. I appreciate that. One thing that you taught me um, in my journey towards being a director of athletics at the highest level, right? You know that I aspire
Sure.
to one day
Hmm.
be a Power Five AD. You and I have talked about that. You said, hey, said you have to go to school where they have football and you have to be, a sports administrator over football
Hmm.
because that's going to bring,
Hmm.
the the fundraising, things like that. But the expansion of these Power Five conferences, Dr. Hamilton, are extraordinary. So let me just read you a couple things. So the SEC is supposed to get Texas and Oklahoma. The Big
Hmm.
12 is due to get BYU, Houston, University of Central Florida, Cincinnati, and maybe if the ACC falls apart, they'll get UNC, Clemson, Florida State, and Miami. And then the Big 10 in 24-25 is supposed to get USC and UCLA. Dr. Hamilton, you have been around for a long period of time. What is that going to do to college football and or um, the intercollegiate athletics? What's that going to do?
Well, first of all, as they do say in legal terms, what's the motive? The motive is 65 to 70% of the athletic programs in the country at the Division One level op, finish the year in the red. Basically,
Mhm.
they don't balance their budget.
Right.
And so institutions are really questioning, and when I say institutions, college presidents are really questioning the rightful place of athletics. And there is a value to athletics. We all know all the values, but now they're wondering at what expense. And so, what these institutions are doing in terms of expanding these power conferences is they just want to balance their budget. And so they have to be able to justify that because when you start furloughing faculty who are some of the biggest and brightest stars in the academia world, it almost seems counterproductive because we're student first, athlete second, or are we
Absolutely.
athlete first? And so um, the one thing that people have to understand is motive. So, motive is to balance the budget. Number two, what is it going to do with intercollegiate athletics? It has already transformed itself to being a major business.
Yes, sir.
When you start talking about colleges and universities, years ago, the $21 million budgets, the $49 million budgets were okay. But we always have to understand when gas and fuel costs go up, that puts those athletic departments in jeopardy. And you
Mhm.
have to be able to roll with those punches. You remember when we were at Chicago State when you had the snowstorm and had to stay at Michigan, right?
Yes, sir.
That's something that's unbudgeted, but we have to do it for the safety of students
Yes,
and
sir.
staff.
And
And
staff.
so what you have to do is you have to create that nest egg so that anything unforeseen, we're not always going in the red.
Right.
And so we all learned a lot from COVID. There were only a few programs that were able to balance budgets after no spectators, right? So these programs, they're doing what's in the best interest of their institutions and their departments. What we are sending a message to Americans and anybody who follows Power Five sports is that it's a major business. And so you got to be able to have entrepreneurial spirit, fundraising experience, being able to work with partnerships, sponsorships, cultivate those relationships and stakeholders and things like that. And you have to just be creative on how you generate the revenue.
Yes, sir. And again, I can attest to that because when we were at Chicago State, we played, I believe it was 9 or 11 pay games, and you
Hmm.
raised in contracts close to $1 million, and we used that money to
Hmm.
help fund the
Understood. Hmm.
non-revenue generating sports, our
Right.
volleyball program, our track and field program. We had a baseball program. So I do get and understand where you are with that whole big business, philosophy. And at Chicago State, we didn't have a whole lot of money, and you were there when you helped build the convocation center. You started that.
Yeah, and so what happened with the convocation center? They had the shell, but they couldn't furnish it. They didn't
Yes,
have
sir.
enough money for furniture,
Right.
fixtures, or equipment. But they
Right.
had the infrastructure. But they
Yes, sir.
couldn't put bleachers in there. They couldn't put desk or anything. So yeah, that was very very good for us to do. But I want to make sure that everybody understands big business doesn't mean sacrificing student athletes.
Right.
Big businesses, great companies, Microsoft, I hate to name drop, these companies that are out there doing wonderful things for the world, that doesn't mean that they sabotage their employees. So the ones that run a great athletic department, although you might be one of the big mega programs, and I'm just going to drop some names, even though I don't have much allegiance to Ohio State because that's a rival for Penn State,
Yes, sir.
they do a great job.
Yep.
Ohio State does a great job. University of Texas does a great job with their student athletes. Penn State does a great job with their student athletes. I can go on that these are big power conference institutions and they do wonderful things for their student athletes. And so I can go on and on and on and on and on. And so I don't want people to get a misunderstanding that just because it's big business, that people are sacrificial.
Right. Because, my AD speaks a lot about student success.
Right.
Doug Newth and me now being here at Southern Utah University, and it's a big thing for us to make sure that the student experience and the student success is first and foremost, right at the
Mhm.
forefront at all times, and that's what I love about our AD and our executive and our senior staff, because that's job number one, right? What they
Right.
say, you only got one job.
Yes,
You
right.
only got one job, and student success is that job.
Right.
Transitioning to our last question, Doc, and like I said, you and I have talked um, before about faith and spirituality and things like that. But how has faith, your faith and spiritualness in your life, how has that impacted your life, Dr. Hamilton?
So it shifted. And I say that because the audiences out there, we live in a world now of inclusivity.
Yes, sir.
And so I keep my faith private because remember, yesteryear it used to be black, white. Then there were black, white. Then there were some other groups that wanted a share of the pie, if you will.
Hmm.
And so now we have agnostic populations, we have atheist populations. And if I speak about my faith,
Yes, sir.
whatever my faith may be, does that mean I'm excluding or not sensitive or not respecting
To others.
somebody else's? So I
Yes, sir.
really keep it kind of on the low, if you will,
Yes, sir.
because we live in this world where we got all these groups now. Remember, diversity were, are we going to hire African American or Latino? Now we have African American, Latino, we have Asian, we have people from the Middle East,
Pacific
Indian,
Islanders.
Pacific Islanders and
Yes, sir.
everything else.
Hmm.
So I want to make sure that I don't ostracize myself and I keep everything inclusive. So I try to keep that close to my vest.
Yes, sir.
Um, and so I want people to know that I do value whatever their belief is.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
So
And Dr. Hamilton, if anybody wants to reach out to you,
sure.
can you share with them how they can get in contact with you for me, please?
Sure. They could either email me at darrenathletics@yahoo.com, or they can email me at darren.hamilton@dpi.nc.gov, or I have a Facebook page and they can certainly check me out on social media. And I believe that is Darren J. Hamilton on Facebook.
Well, as always, Dr. Hamilton, it is a pleasure to talk to you and get those nuggets of wisdom like Solomon. I'm constantly picking your brain, and I thank you for taking the time to invest in me over almost 20 years, and
Sure.
because many of the opportunities that I've come into, I've talked to you before then, and you've shared approaches with me, and I do appreciate that. And so, um, I'm still gonna keep picking your brain, right? Because
Oh, yeah.
as our viewers can see, Dr. Darren J. Hamilton has some wisdom and some experience to share, and those young people that you're down there impacting in North Carolina, they don't realize what they're getting because they're getting the gym. So I appreciate you, Dr. Hamilton. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Oh, it was an honor, and I'm glad to share some knowledge. And if I can lift somebody up, if I can help advance somebody forward, I'm willing to do that. That's what we need, more people to do that and leverage those networks so that every opportunity, we got to understand, if you are up here with the Elon Musk and the senior bankers and the attorneys, they have more opportunities and more networks. But
Yes,
if
sir.
I'm living in a lower end community, I don't have those networks. So we got to create that for people so
Yes,
that
sir.
they can advance, because you have a lot of talented and smart people, but if they don't have the connections, you're not going to get to the economic advancement or acquire wealth.
Yes, sir.
And so
Yes,
we
sir.
got to create those networks so people can touch others and leverage. That's why I love that Mr. Thomas has brought on, that student to work,
Yes,
because
sir.
that's a network.
Ahmad. Yes, sir.
And I
Yes, sir.
hope that
And
he
and that's what he
fulfills
does.
that. And I hope he leverages that so he can learn and not move too fast. I'm talking
Yes,
about
sir.
the student. I hope he
Student
doesn't move too
Ahmad. Yes,
fast
sir.
and he
Mhm.
soaks up that knowledge. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
that's the
Well,
key.
so again, don't go away, Dr. Hamilton. Stay in the green room afterwards. But I'd like to thank
Oh, yeah.
Dr. J. Hamilton for being a part of From the AD's View. Be sure to join us each Sunday evening at 6:30 Central, 7:30 Eastern for more open and honest discussions from the AD's View. Good night and God bless.